Hi, what's going on? It's been a minute. I expect like three people are going to see this, but all the same, in light of recent events, I figured I would also chime in with my completely uneducated opinion because why the hell not? It seems like that's something that is happening um, all over the place, specifically related to Operation Epic Fury that the United States and Israel launched against Iran. Was that day before yesterday? Um, why why this happened, there are a lot of possible reasons. Um, but damn it, if it's not incredibly frustrating listening to people twist themselves into pretzels, trying to spin this as if there's only a singular national interest, a single nation with any interest in this at all, and that's the only reason. That's the only reason. And I'm specifically going to talk about in this the Israel bad crowd. Um, I don't know when it became popular again to hate on Jews. I don't understand that. Um, I I'm not saying that you have to like Jews. I'm not saying that you have to uh, sort of whitewash whatever it is that the Jewish people might do or Jewish customs that you don't like or whatever. And I'm not even sitting here and saying that you have to defend the nation of Israel. I'm American. My primary concern is America. But there are so many people out there who just cannot help themselves but want to hate on Jews all the time. And it doesn't matter if there's reasons for why they're doing what they're doing. They are automatically discounted because of the fact that they're Jewish. And the thing that's even crazier about this is that this is a phenomenon that's happened on the left and it's also happening on the right. You now have two incredibly fractured and divided political coalitions in the United States that fundamentally disagree on almost every single social issue that we have. You've got the far left who will at the extremist degrees they want to be able to murder infants in hospitals before they've even left the mother's body, right? Partial birth abortion. Look at Governor Spanberger in Virginia. That's something that she's trying to push now. You've got the far right crowd who are no abortions ever, period, for any reason at all. You've got the far left who create terms for pedophiles and seem to want to downplay the effects of pedophiles or the uh, pedophilic predilections some people might have with the terms map that they created. That was a creation of the far left. You've got the fact that the far left defends illegal immigrants in this country who are wanted by immigrations and customs for the fact that they have committed violent crimes against children, sexual crimes against children. And then you've got the far right, who, myself included, would love nothing more than a national holiday where you get to go out and you get to just watch pedophiles get executed in the street. Okay? We don't agree on almost anything at all. And yet somehow the Israel bad crowd, if you're one of them watching this, and I'm sure there's going to be comments from people here who are going to be like, the Jews, man, or whatever. Um, I think you are detestable, but hats off to you because the Israel bad crowd figured out how to get disparate components of both the left and the right to come together, and it was hating Jews and hating Israel. They figured out a way to be able to create some kind of a bridge between what is probably an insurmountable difference in political opinions in the United States going forward. As an American, I don't foresee any possible way that you could bring the left and the right together again in any real union sense. I don't think that's possible. But somehow these fuckers figured out that if you can get the Majus bad crowd on this side and the Majus bad crowd on this side, somehow get them to link together, now you've created some weird fucked up bridge. And that's precisely where we are right now. Question for all of the people out there who want to say that these strikes on Iran are just because of Israel, just because it's what Israel wanted. Benjamin Netanyahu wanted these attacks on Iran to happen, and so that's why it happened. That's the only reason. Question for you. You understand the idea, the reality, that two things can be true at the same time. Yes? You understand that that's a thing? Perhaps I'm being too generous in ascribing general intelligence or IQ to these individuals, but the idea of Israel and the United States both having a vested interest in preventing the number one global state sponsor of terrorism, Islamic terrorism in the world, from being able to continue existing. That's possible. In fact, it's the most likely logical explanation for this. But the Israel bad crowd, they operate in this mental framework of exclusivity, right? Mutually exclusive concepts. So if you look at the way they're framing this, they're framing it that in such a way as that this only benefits Israel, and because it only benefits Israel, it therefore cannot benefit the United States. Because Israel is going to benefit from this destabilization of Iranian terrorist regime, the Iranian terrorist regime, then the United States must not be getting anything out of this at all. And we're only participating because the Israelis are participating. That's fucking dumb. That's fucking dumb. I don't understand that I struggle even to call it a line of thought, that particular train of logic. I fail to be able to wrap my mind around that, and it feels an awful lot like it's confirmation bias. You have people now who exist in the world on the left and the right who both believe that Israel and the Jews, they might say, no, not the Jewish people, but the Israelis or the Israeli government or Israel, but it's the Jews. Okay, they don't like the Jews. They're just not going to tell you that. Okay. But you've got people on the left and the right who dislike Israel. And so anything that Israel does is bad. And so this current conflict, they're feeding their confirmation bias. Or their confirmation bias has so tunneled their vision that as they watch this conflict unfold in real time, they are subconsciously, their minds are removing any possible reason for the United States to be involved, any part of this that benefits the United States, and consciously their mind is only highlighting things that confirm what it is they've already convinced themselves to be true. So there's no argument that you can make to them to convince them that the United States benefits from this also, because in their mind, Israel's the only one who benefits from this. This whole thing is Israel's doing, and so there's no information that you can give them that can pull them back to show there's a reason for the US to also want to get this done. Iran is the number one state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it's been that for decades, for longer than I've been alive. And every single civilized nation in the world knows that. All of them know this. The regional powers there also know it. The Gulf states that have been hit by Iran, they know that Iran sponsors state terrorism. Or they're the number one state sponsor of terrorism. The US knows it, Canada knows it, Western Europe knows it, Russia knows it, China knows it. We're all aware that this is a thing. And yet for the entire duration of the Islamic Republic, and for as long as they've been engaging in this, no one has ever had the balls to actually do something about it. And this for me is really where it is, to me, it's rather remarkable to see people look at the current conflict that's going on with Iran and completely bypass what I'm about to lay out here to jump to some other conclusion. Israel, US government shills for Israel, rather than just look at the most obvious possible explanation that exists for this, And then with that being the basis, then look for things that either confirm this or look for things that might show you that that might not be the case. Question for everyone who's against this. And by the way, I'm not 100% on board with this as it stands right now. I think there's a lot of ways that it can go really bad. However, I will be the first to say that I think that this was a long time coming. Question: how long was the United States, Western Europe, the Gulf states, how long are we supposed to tolerate the Islamist proxies that Iran funds and arms to commit acts of terrorism? How long are we supposed to be okay with having to deal with these disparate organizations that only are able to function to the degree that they do because of the state backing of Iran, before somebody somewhere finally goes, wait a minute, those guys suck. We don't like those guys, right? They do some dumb shit. We put them in their place. They go away for a little while, and then they come back and they do more dumb shit, and then we have to put them in their place, and they go away, and then they come back. What if, hear me out, crazy idea, what if instead of getting rid of them, we got rid of that guy? You know, that guy. The guy over there who's giving those guys money, weapons, safe harbor, intelligence, creating digital smokescreens for them, providing them with the means to operate. Why don't we instead remove the kingpin rather than just continue to fight the little underlings that they send out after you? This is the same strategy that was employed against the mob. When the FBI started targeting organized crime in the United States, i.e. the Italian mob largely, the whole operating ideology there was to get dirt on the little guys or catch them in a bad situation, to then be able to flip them, to then climb the ladder up to the guys who actually make the calls, the guys who actually are important and run the thing. The guys that if you remove them, all of a sudden this organization ceases to function, or at least its functions become so disrupted that you then can pivot your operation to be able to sort of mop up whatever is left or prevent ascension of somebody new. Why is it that the United States of America is supposed to just tolerate the Iranian state funding Islamist terrorism all over the world? No one has explained that. No one has laid out that case. Even the people that are against what just happened with Iran, none of them have made the case for why the U.S., for if the United States was simply supposed to just continue to tolerate this. Is that what the argument is? That we're supposed to just tolerate around funding these Islamist terrorist organizations in perpetuity till the heat death of the universe? Because we can't actually do anything to the kingpin. We can't do anything to the people that control the strings, the puppet master. That would be going a bridge too far. Why? Why is that the case? How does that make any sense? I'm so confused. I'm so confused on why that particular component of this, just no one who the Israel bad crowd or the libertarian, the goofy ass libertarians who are arguing about this, the Dave Smiths out there who are arguing about this or are angry about it. What is your answer then to that? Are we supposed to just in perpetuity for forever just deal with this number one sponsor of terrorism globally, Islamist terrorism in the world globally for forever? For forever. We're never allowed to do anything about that. The regime, by the way, that's been at this for probably at least 30 years, if not longer than that. Why? Why do we have to, why can't we do anything about that? And then the conversation will go to the nuclear stuff, and people will go, well, they've been saying for a long time that Iran could have a nuclear weapon, and that it could happen at any moment, and it would be a problem, and then a strike is launched on Iran, or something similar happens, and then there's some kind of a negotiation, and then Iran, because they're Muslim extremist terrorists, can't help themselves but continuously poke the bear. They can't come to the table in good faith and negotiate with the West, with the US and Israel and or Britain and or Germany and or France and or continue picking, because our way of life, our existence, our society, our culture is antithetical to the existence of an Islamic culture, an Islamic society. Understand very clearly that is the reason that the Islamic terrorist regime in Iran never negotiates in good faith with the West. Because, see, we're infidels. They can't negotiate with us in good faith. So they do precisely what they did this last time, where there were weeks where the US Navy was building up our assets there in the region, and the Iranians just continuously were stonewalling, even to the point where the United States offered the Iranians nuclear fuel forever for civilian use. If you want to have nuclear power for civilian reasons, energy reasons, the United States of America offered to provide Iran with nuclear fuel for forever. For forever. As long as they said we will not pursue a nuclear weapon, we will dismantle our nuclear weapons program, which they very clearly have, we'll give them nuclear fuel. We'll give them the fuel in order to operate those systems. And the Iranians flat out turned it down. So they're not negotiating from a place of good faith. So again, how long are we supposed to put up with that? How long are we supposed to put up with people that we know when they come to the table, they have no desire to negotiate with you. They have no desire to make any kind of concession to you at all, period, full stop. They are simply there to just waste your time and or make you look bad and or completely misrepresent what happened, to then turn around and be able to galvanize the population that they have an iron grip on about how you're some great evil power or something. How long do we put up with that bullshit? How long? We're in a position of power, the United States of America. We don't have to put up with your nonsense. We don't have to negotiate with you at all if we don't want to. We simply can just project military power like we are right now with the US Navy and the Air Force. We don't need to negotiate with you, but we want to give you this chance to negotiate with us because we don't want it to get to the point where we have to start lobbing missiles into your country. But if you continuously, forever, are not coming to those negotiations that do take place from a place of good faith, seeking to make some kind of concession with the aim of averting some kind of armed crisis, what's the point of having the negotiation for? What is the point of doing that? It's no different than having an argument with somebody that you know is stubborn and you cannot change their mind. If you believe one thing, somebody else believes something else, and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is nothing that you can say to them that would change their mind, and there is nothing they could say to you that would change your mind, then any argument that you might have with that person is entirely a waste of oxygen. So what's the point? What's the point? The nuclear stuff, right? Again, this all matters. This all ties into this. We had the strike last year that happened where we took out Fordo and a gigantic complex of underground centrifuges, which Iran totally didn't have, by the way. By the way, the Israel bad crowd, okay, they're going to try and say that was totally above board, those gigantic complexes of nuclear centrifuges. They're also going to tell you, or not tell you, that the Iranians getting uranium to 60% enrichment is somehow not dangerous or doesn't matter, despite the fact that Iran would be the only country to get to 60% uranium enrichment and not pursue a nuclear weapon. This is the same country, by the way, that consistently talks about how much they want to have a nuclear weapon because then they can lob it at the Israelis or they can lob it at us. This is the same, again, like, I'm just lost on this. I'm so lost on how people are just completely discrediting or not considering all of the components of this. You have a country. It would be one thing if the United States and Israel ginned this up overnight. Like, if you've never heard about Iran before, if you've never heard the Iranian state media or anybody attached to their military or government talk about them wanting a nuclear weapon, and all of a sudden the United States launched a massive naval attack against the Iranian government, the Iranian capital, the Iranian people, and then the justification afterwards was nuclear weapons, it would be entirely fair for people to be confused and wonder what the hell is going on. What do you mean nuclear weapons? Why is it that we didn't hear about this before you just started firing cruise missiles into Iran? But that's not the case. The Iranians have not been shy about the fact that they want a nuclear weapon. At all, period, full stop. Again, question to the it's only Israel crowd, the Jews bad crowd. At what fucking point do you have to just take the gloves off and just beat the shit out of someone? Like, at what point do you have to just take a shit kicker and knock their teeth in to get them to finally quit fucking around? I am so confused here. How far was this supposed to go? How far were we supposed to let them go? You do understand that the likely outcome is Iran would acquire a nuclear weapon. That was a matter of time. It's not a matter of if or a matter of when. It's going to happen. It's something that was absolutely going to happen. And by the way, that doesn't have to be a nuclear intercontinental ballistic missile, because from my understanding, from the limited research that I've done, Iran doesn't have the ability to fire an ICBM. They don't have the technology to do that. Regionally, yes. They can project power regionally, and we're seeing that now with the responses that they've had to the U.S. and Israeli offensive that was launched on them. But an ICBM, no. Okay, fine. A dirty bomb? A low yield delivery? You understand a nuclear weapon is a nuclear weapon, yes? Like, it seems like when people talk about nuclear weapons in the modern world, they think about something from like fucking Terminator, where it just completely destroys Los Angeles. It doesn't have to be that. All it has to be is a dirty bomb. All it has to be is a low-yield missile of some kind with a nuclear tip on it. Or some kind, or not even that. You could just put some kind of nuclear material in a missile, not even necessarily a nuclear missile itself, but just to contaminate something, just so the explosion disseminates, creates some kind of a fallout, which is really what the danger of a nuclear weapon would be, is the fallout. And a lower yield weapon could do that very easily. It doesn't have to be something that turns the earth into glass when it goes off. And yet that seems to be where, when you hear nuclear weapon, that's what people think about. They think about that scene from Terminator 2 where Sarah Connor's holding on that chain link fence and LA just gets glassed. No, it doesn't have to be that. It can be a dirty bomb. It can be a low yield missile. It can be a myriad of different things that are nuclear weapons. But let's just go with this, okay? You understand, especially in the case of it being able to be a missile. Let's say that it was a missile system, a nuclear tipped missile system, okay, or a missile designed specifically to carry and deliver a nuclear payload. That is the function of this missile system. You realize that the way that would work would be that we would go to bed one night without knowing they have it, and then the next morning they have it. Do you understand how that changes the entire geopolitical world forever? Forever. You now have an Islamic fundamentalist state, okay, that hates infidels. That's literally everybody who's not a Muslim. Hates a whole other half of Islam. Hates the Western world. Actively funds terrorist organizations and arms terrorist organizations all over the world that yesterday did not have a nuclear weapon and today they now do. You understand how that changes entirely how you would deal with them. And it would take military action almost entirely off the table, aside from your own initial massive, overwhelming military strike designed to cripple them entirely. Because now, anytime they start feeling a little uppity, or anytime that the international community needs to reprimand them for poor conduct, now they can threaten that funny red button that they all of a sudden developed. That was the scenario that was going to happen. Again, for the Israel only crowd, the Jews bad crowd, understand that was an inevitability. They would get to that point, and then all of a sudden, your mechanisms for being able to manage their conduct change overnight. And now maybe you can't do anything. Now maybe you can't even sanction them, because what if they start talking about bombing people with a nuclear weapon? And then understand this as well. If Iran were to acquire a dedicated nuclear weapon, the Saudis would also then build a nuclear weapon. They talked about this last year when Midnight Hammer happened. The Saudi, I believe it's the Saudi Crown Prince, did an interview where he openly said that if the Iranians acquired a nuclear missile, nuclear weapons, period, then the Saudi Arabians were also then going to start building and acquiring nuclear weapons. And now you've got, what, 3 countries in that particular region of the world that have nuclear weapons? Iran, an Islamic fundamentalist terrorist state with nuclear weapons, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. How long until the other countries in that region then also start to build up nuclear stockpiles? There are myriads of reasons why this attack happened. And by the way, if you're not on board with it, if you don't support it, that's fine. I understand. But at least have some kind of an intellectually sound reason for why you don't like this. And you're not getting that from a lot of people. You get a lot of people who are only against this event because of the fact that they think that Israel somehow was the puppet master, and that's the only reason that this happened. Because they are so small-minded that they are incapable of understanding that Israel and the United States can have very similar, if not perfectly aligned interests, and that combined interest is what motivates us then to action. For them, that's not possible. It's only Israel. And this is largely spurred by Tucker Carlson, the video that he just put up, where he was talking about that. He opens the video talking about the war. And the whole thing is about that. War. And he outright says that it's Israel's war, is what it is. That is, and I like Tucker, but that is completely disingenuous. Completely disingenuous. No, this is something that was going to happen, needed to happen. Israel was on board. We were on board. Iran is a threat to the entire region. And then this is something else too that much like President Trump did with the media, arguably his biggest achievement of his political career was exposing the media. People for years thought that the media was honest with them. And then Trump came along, and just his existence was enough to get people to see that, no, they've been lying to you the entire time. You just didn't have somebody who was actively willing to call them out for their bullshit. And he did. Look at what's happening now. Look at the Iranian response to US and Israel engaging in a military offensive against Iran. They're bombing hotels, they're bombing airports, they're bombing civilian infrastructure in countries that had nothing to do with this at all. That shows you that that's always who they were. Iran having a seat in the UN is one of the dumbest things possible. This is a regime that cares absolutely none about human rights. Period. It is an Islamic fundamentalist regime. Sharia law is not very good for women, okay? Children. Okay, them being on the UN is fucking. It's a joke. Okay, they were allowed until yesterday, until Saturday, to pretend that they were somehow a civilized country and deserved a seat at the table. By the way, there are other countries that should not have seats at the UN. But Iran in particular, given that this is happening with Iran, they were allowed to pretend they were civilized. They were allowed to pretend that they were decent people. This shows you this was always who they were. They just didn't have the excuse to go ahead and just commit terrorism all over. But look exactly what they're doing right now. Yes, they're attacking American military installations. What about the French naval base that got hit by the Iranians? The fuck was that? Why did they do that? Who knows? The attacks on the Burj Khalifa? Who knows? Kuwait International Airport? Who knows? The Saudi oil field that happened, what, yesterday? Late Saturday, early yesterday? Why? Why are they attacking everyone? Because they were always terrorists. They were always bad, evil actors. And they were pretending that they weren't. And the moment that they got the opportunity to finally show everyone exactly who they were, they jumped on the opportunity. And now they're just full sending it. They're willing to kill anyone and everyone. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. How will this end up going? Who knows? It could end up being great. It could end up going very poorly. I do not want the United States to have troops on the ground. I think President Trump, this could end up being something that he goes down for in a good way, his legacy, if this works out well. If we put boots on the ground, that's going to cause a big problem for him. A huge problem for him politically. And for the GOP. But this needed to happen. This had to happen sooner rather than later. If you wait too long, you're going to wake up one morning and all of a sudden the bad guys now have the most powerful weapons known to man. Even if they're not the same, and they wouldn't be the same as what we have, like our top-end nuclear delivery systems, but a nuclear weapon of some kind. And now, all of a sudden, any possible means you have to address their actions and conduct gets vastly shrunk down. This had to happen. And it is beyond disappointing that you have European countries who also lost members of their military to Iranian proxies not willing to belly up to the bar. If Germany, France, and the UK all jumped in offensively against Iran alongside the United States and Israel, the entire thing could be taken care of in a handful of days. A handful of days. But they won't do it. Keir Starmer's message that he gave last night was one of the most cringe-inducing, pathetic things that I've seen ever. This had to happen. This was going to happen. This was an inevitability. Because you cannot exist in a place where a regime like the Iranian regime can be allowed to continue to pursue a nuclear weapon. And again, I understand people hear that nuclear weapon thing and they think about Iraq and weapons of mass destruction. Understand this is very, very different than that. Iran has talked about wanting a nuclear weapon. They have actively antagonized the United States, talking about how they have a right to having a nuclear weapon. Iran actively is enriching to a point where it would be incredibly easy for them to go from where they are to having a nuclear weapon. The biggest problem for them right now, as far as I can tell, seems to be delivery system. Seems to be Not the fact that they don't have the nuclear material. They had something like 1,000 pounds, I think it was, last summer when we hit them in Midnight Hammer, of enriched uranium at 60%. 60% enriched uranium. Okay? It seems as if that the jump, and from my understanding, the jump from that to weapons grade is not that big of a deal. It's not that hard to do. But the delivery system seems to be the problem. That seems to be where Iran was struggling, is how can we create a weapon system to be able to carry a nuclear payload as far as we want it to go? That seems to be the biggest problem that they were having. They had intent. They continuously double, triple, quadrupled down on the fact that this is what they were wanting. We came to them, understand, again, we came to them last week and said, if you want nuclear energy, we, the United States, if you agree to stop with all of your nuclear crap, we will give you the nuclear fuel necessary for your civilian energy projects. Forever. No cost. Totally free. Free nuclear fuel forever. And the Iranians turned it down. Why? Because it was never about nuclear energy. It was always about nuclear weapons. That's always been the thing. I don't get why people just don't understand. It's like if the threat doesn't exist right now at this moment, people just can't see it. It's like the ability of people to be able to project vision into the future and think about theoretical possibilities is a quality that's diminished somehow, perhaps likely due to the faults of education, the education system. But it's like if it's not right now, immediate, in your face now, then it's not a problem and there's nothing that we can do about it. There's no reason to do anything about it. That is so fucking stupid. Especially when you've got somebody on the other side, an adversary, who continuously tells you what they want and doubles down on it every single chance that they get. When your enemy tells you who they are, believe them. Believe them. Where does this go? I have no idea. No idea. It could go phenomenally for the administration. It could go poorly for the administration. But it had to happen. It was going to happen eventually anyway. I just wanted to come on here because the people who are telling you this only happened because of Israel are fucking stupid. They are fucking stupid people. See, now the difference is, I'm sitting here saying, absolutely, Israel has an objective here. They have a reason for this. They have something that they want out of this too. But so do we. We are not simply just doing this for the giggles or because Israel wants us to do it. We're also doing it because the Iranians are a threat to the United States. Our military base is overseas. The Iranians, if they could get a weapon system and the material to create a nuclear ICBM that could reach the United States of America, would be an existential crisis for the United States of America. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. No ifs, ands, ors, or buts. Period. Full stop. That cannot be allowed to happen. And if we try negotiating with them for decades, and every single time they spit in your face, at some point, diplomacy stops working. Not every war is going to be Iraq. There are fights worth having. This is one of those fights worth having. Can't tell you how it's going to pan out, but just because you don't know how the fight is going to conclude does not mean that the fight is not worth having.